There's a really interesting pattern that shows up throughout human history. People from completely different cultures keep describing encounters with the same kind of presence, a compassionate feminine intelligence. And the reason this caught my attention is because some of those descriptions feel very similar to experiences I've had myself. And if you've been following my page for a while, you know that over the past year I've been sharing footage of the orb phenomenon that I've been witnessing in the sky. These luminous lights that sometimes appear like stars but then move in ways that clearly aren't satellites or aircraft, more like plasma. Experiencing something like that repeatedly changes the way you look at reality, because once you see something like that, it opens a door. You start asking bigger questions about consciousness and intelligence, and during the same period of time, I've also had moments in meditation and quiet states where I felt something that's honestly difficult to describe. The closest way I can explain it is that it feels like a divine feminine presence, not something physically standing in front of me, but more like an intelligence, a presence, something aware and ancient. And after experiencing that, I became curious. So I started looking into encounter stories throughout history, and what I found is honestly fascinating. Across completely different cultures and time periods, people keep describing encounters with what they call a divine feminine presence. For example, in the 1800s, there was an Indian mystic named Ramakrishna who was devoted to the goddess Kali, the Divine Mother. He prayed to her with such intensity that one day he said reality literally dissolved around him. The temple disappeared, the world vanished, and he described seeing an infinite ocean of radiant consciousness. And out of that light, the Mother appeared. He said she was alive, conscious, a real presence. Now jump over to medieval Europe. There was a woman named Hildegard of Bingen. She was a composer, a healer, and a mystic. She described seeing visions of a radiant feminine presence she called divine wisdom. She said this being appeared like a woman shining brighter than the sun, and the voice sounded like rushing water. Hildegard believed the music she later composed actually came through those encounters. Then, in the 1800s again, a teenage girl in France named Bernadette reported seeing a glowing woman in white inside of a cave. She described overwhelming peace and compassion radiating from this presence. That cave eventually became the famous pilgrimage site of Lourdes, and something else really stood out to me. These kinds of experiences don't just show up in religion. Jazz musician Alice Coltrane described receiving music during deep meditation like it was flowing through her from some higher feminine source. And if you listen to artists talk about songwriting, you'll often hear them say the same thing, that songs arrive, almost like something moving through them rather than something they created. So when you step back and look at the pattern, it becomes really interesting. Different cultures, different centuries, different names. Tara, Mary, Sophia, Kali, Kuan Yin, Durga, right here. But the experience itself is very similar. A radiant feminine presence, compassion, guidance, creativity, transformation. And very often a message about caring for humanity and living in harmony, which is really interesting to me because that's exactly the feeling I get when I encounter this phenomenon in my own life. It feels like a reminder that humanity is capable of building a world based on compassion, balance, and cooperation. And maybe that's why these encounters keep appearing across human history. Maybe this wisdom is not new. Maybe it's something humanity has been receiving reminders of again and again. And that's something I am going to definitely keep exploring. If you like this video, stay tuned for part 2. There are 2 stories that I think you will really love that have to do with this divine feminine presence.